I'm going to assume that every single one of you knows about the Linux mascot Tux, and you probably also know he was made by Larry Ewing in 1996 using GIMP. In fact, the very first version of GIMP publicly available. But that's probably the extent of what you've looked into and what you've heard. So let's do exactly that. Let's go back and talk about the Tux lore. The very first question that most people probably have is, why a penguin? The answer is literally nothing. A penguin has nothing to do with Linux. Yes, there are these after-the-fact explanations that some people are using, but the justification at the time, not at all relevant. However, there is a reason. It's just not a reason with Linux, it's a reason with its creator, Linus Torvalds. This is a story that's been repeated in bits and pieces in various different places. For example, the often cited A Conversation with Linus Torvalds, but I'm going to go with this article over here from Linux Australia. Tux, the Aussie Penguin. Sadly, the live version of the site no longer has this article. There is a link to Tux as an SVG, but I do wish this was more properly preserved. Thank God there are archives though. What does the penguin have to do with Australia, you may ask? From Linus Torvalds, I've always liked penguins, and when I was in Canberra a few years ago, we went to a local zoo. That was 1993 at the National Zoo and Aquarium in Canberra, with Andrew Tridgell of Samba fame, the same Andrew Tridgell who works on rsync. Yes, Andrew Tridgell has known Torvalds and, presumably if he is visiting him, been friends with him for over 30 years. There they had a ferocious penguin that bit me and infected me with a little-known disease called penguinitis. Penguinitis makes you stay awake at night just thinking about penguins and feeling great love towards them. So when Linux needed a mascot, the first thing that came to my mind was this picture of the majestic penguin, and the rest is history. That's a slightly exaggerated version, slightly more accurate. Yes, I was bitten by a penguin, but it wasn't actually very ferocious. It was really just a pygmy penguin, also known as a little penguin, a fairy penguin, or a blue penguin, about 6 inches tall or something. And it was more of a timid nibble. Is this finger I see before me a small fish or what? Even so, I like penguins a lot. A more down-to-earth version is a lot of other logos are pretty boring. Even today, especially today, they're pretty boring. I was looking for something fun and sympathetic to associate with Linux. A slightly fat penguin that sits down after having had a great meal fits the bill perfectly. Also, don't take the penguin too seriously. It's supposed to be goofy and fun. That's the whole point. Linux is supposed to be goofy and fun. It's also the best operating system out there, but it's goofy and fun at the same time. This whole encounter with the penguin happened about 2 years after the kernel project started. They didn't get a logo at that point though. That didn't happen until quite a bit later. We'll get to that. Firstly though, it was found in 2009 that this sign was outside the enclosure where that same penguin was still living to that day. In the wild, pygmy penguins live about 6 to 7 years, in captivity about 15 to 25. So whilst it's had likely a considerably longer life, by this point, it's very likely that penguin is now deceased. Over the years, different people have interpreted the story in various different ways. For example, Linus was assaulted by a huge, rabid, man-eating penguin that was running amok and was moving at more than 100 miles per hour when it attacked him. Obviously a joke. But you know, that was the spirit that Linus was trying to sort of cultivate at the time with the use of a penguin. Until 1996, there was no official mascot for Linux, and then we had this email from Matt Hartley. I didn't do this picture, so don't email me about it. Check out lin64.jpg in Sunsight's incoming directory. It is very well done, and thankfully, this image has been archived. Linux, Take Your Computer to Another Dimension by a David Christensen. And whilst this is not a logo being used by Linux, this is not a mascot and not a imagery being used by Linux, this conversation is what started the discussion, at least on the mailing list, at least in emails, of a Linux mascot. I'll leave this page linked down below. This is where I actually found the lin64.jpg, but there are various other forms as well, like linux2g.jpg, or I'm trying to find ones that are in a format I can actually open. We have this very, very low resolution GIF. You have Linux, you have X. There was a match made in heaven at the time. Check this out, there is some fun stuff here. As a direct response to this, Alan Cox said this: "Does anyone with a fireproof vest and a good drawing hand want to try a picture of the BSD daemon flat out on the floor with stars around its head and a penguin in boxing gloves standing on top?" So there was already this discussion around Torvalds liking penguins. He'd probably raised the idea that if we ever had a logo, if we ever had a mascot, a penguin would be nice. This is what really started the ideas flowing. From there, the thread became a little bit chaotic, but chaotic in a good way. I don't think FreeBSD is the adversary here, but Windows 95 certainly is. This was in May 3rd, 1996. It was the latest version of Windows at the time. How about a penguin smashing in a window or something? Sure. How about Bill Gates looking through a window at a penguin doing something and saying, "If only I could do that"? My vote goes for a penguin and an iceberg with the sinking Windows flag on the side or in the foreground. No need to get violent, but to make the point that Windows is on its way out. Here. I vote for a penguin breaking out of prison by riding a canoe through a Microsoft-style window. Obviously, none of these became official mascots, but I'm sure there is imagery out there somewhere on the internet. Hopefully, I've not been able to find it. If you want to draw something, take any of these prompts or any of the other prompts in the thread and show me something fun. I would love to see it. Eventually, though, Torvalds did step into the thread and had to sort of direct things in a more sensible fashion. In response to Steve Ulrich, I have to agree, Alan's logo would be kind of funny, but not really done in the best taste. Now, you hopefully all know that I like penguins, so I finally copied my favorite penguin picture to the FTP. I have no idea of the copyright status of that picture. I found it on another FTP site. Thanks, Alan, for pointing me towards it. And if you're running X, you should add this line to XNRC, which I believe is going to set it as your wallpaper. Now, due to copyrights, etc., we can't use this as the Linux logo, but think of this penguin as the killer penguin, and you'll be in the right frame of mind for doing a real Linux logo. This is a penguin with an attitude. I don't know exactly what the attitude is, but it's definitely there. And this picture also has been archived. Here it is. This is, I guess you could call it proto-tux. It's in a very different style. It has a very different vibe with the emotion it's trying to give off. But the design and the posture, the pose it has, this is the Tux DNA. After a few days, we started seeing prototypes roll in. Now, sadly, this one made by Dale Sheets, I cannot find anywhere on the web. If you happen to have it, if maybe you saved it at the time, if somehow you have a copy of it, please send it my way. But the response from Torvalds is still very important because this gives an explanation of the kind of vibes he wants this penguin to give off. Technically, it wasn't actually Tux at this point. That name had not yet been decided. We'll get to that a little bit later. Somebody had a logo competition announcement. Maybe people can send their ideas to a website. Anyway, this one looks like a poor penguin. It's not really strong enough to hold up the world, and it's going to get squished. Not a good, positive logo in that respect. Now, when you think about penguins, first take a deep, calming breath. And then think cuddly. Take another breath and think cute. Go back to cuddly for a while and go on breathing, then think contented. With me so far, good. Don't worry, it gets much worse from here. Now, with penguins, cuddly such, contented means it either just gotten laid or it's stuffed on herring. Take it from me, I'm an expert on penguins. Those are really the only two options. Now, working on that angle, we don't really want to be associated with a randy penguin. Now, randy is, in this context, British slang for horny. We don't want to be associated with a horny penguin. So, we should be looking at the stuffed to its brim with herring angle here. Well, we do, but it's not politic. I assume this would be like a modern equivalent of politically correct. So, we won't. So, we should be looking at the stuffed to its brim with herring angle here. When you think penguin, you should be imagining a slightly overweight penguin, not fat. Emphasis on the not fat, but you should be able to see that it's sitting down because it's really too stuffed to stand up. Think beanbag here, sitting down after having gorged itself and having just burped. It's sitting there with a beatific smile. The world is a good place to be when you've just eaten a few gallons of raw fish and you can feel another burp coming. Now, if you have problems associating yourself with something that gets off by eating raw fish, think chocolate or something, but you get the idea. Okay, so we should be thinking of a lovable, cuddly stuffed penguin sitting down after having gorged itself on herring. Still with me. Now comes the hard part. With this image firmly etched on your eyeballs, you then sketch a stylized version of it. Not a lot of detail, just a black brush type outline. You know, the effect you get with a brush with the thickness of the line varies. That requires talent. Give people the outline and they should say, sickly sweet voice, baby talk almost, ooh, what a cuddly penguin, I bet he is stuffed with herring. And small children will jump up and down and scream, mummy, mummy, can I have one too? Then we can do a larger version with some more detail, maybe leaning against a globe of the world, but I don't think we really want to give any macho penguin image here about Atlas or anything. That more detailed version can spank Billy Boy to tears for all I care, or play ice hockey with a FreeBSD demon, but the simple single penguin would be the logo, and the others would just be cuddly penguin being used as an actor in some tableau. But not everyone agrees that tux shouldn't be a sex symbol, a horny penguin you might say. Slashdot's Miller believes that tux is a great logo because it has sex appeal. Women are strongly drawn to tux, they love tux, Miller said. That's why Linux developers are always smiling. Miller said he was recently in Nashville, Tennessee to talk to a local user group which was meeting at the Auto Diesel College. He'd been giving directions that got him to campus, but had no idea which room the group was meeting in. Then two beautiful girls got out of the pickup truck and unloaded a 4-foot-high stuffed tux. They headed off and I followed them and tux to see the meeting. Miller said, you're not going to see Microsoft users carrying around a window or Mac people with a big stuffed apple, but you always know when you're in Linux country because you will see tux. One thing you probably heard many times is that Larry Ewing made tux, and tux was selected from a Linux logo contest in 1996. This is only partially true. Yes, tux was made by Larry Ewing, and yes, there was a Linux logo contest. Actually, there was at least 3 of them. Tux won none of them. The actual winner was Matt Erickson with his Powered by Linux logo, which is a totally fine logo and the kind of logo you would expect to see at that time. However, I do think it has far less appeal than tux does as a mascot, and people over the years have combined them together, and I think this does kind of work, but if we didn't have tux, I don't think this would be anywhere near as memorable as this representation of Linux. This series of contests is also where we saw the other known logo, Alan McKay's Linux Fox, which nowadays often goes by the name Xenia. This has been redone many times, but this is the original art here made by Alan McKay. If Matt Erickson is the one who won the contest, why is it that we associate tux as the mascot? Technically, not a logo, not important. It is the symbol associated with Linux. Why is it tux? Why is it this penguin? Simply put, Torvalds liked the penguin. Torvalds gave the penguin the green light, and the penguin is what everyone used. A few months later, alongside the Linux 2.0 release, we had this comment from Linus Torvalds. Linux now has a logo thanks to the artistic talents of Larry Ewing, and one version, the pretty version, is included with the kernel. Some people have told me that they don't think a fat penguin really embodies the grace of Linux, which just tells me they've never seen an angry penguin charging at them in excess of 100 miles per hour. They'd be a lot more careful about what they say if they had. This is, I think, where that 100-mile-per-hour thing actually came from. I don't know if he's just repeating what somebody else said to him, or he's the one who first started it. Either way, this is often cited as the origin of that quote. Whilst they had the penguin at this point, actually they had it about a month earlier, they didn't yet have a name for it, but a name was coming very, very soon. Let's name the penguin. Let's start the "we name the penguin while Linus is not around" contest. I vote for Homer. Why Homer? Well, Tux kinda looks like Homer Simpson sitting down. He's fat. Tux is fat. You know, you kinda get it. Now, obviously, that name didn't exactly stick, but we got a suggestion from James Hughes. Torvalds Unix. Tux. Tux. That is where the name came from. Now, we did spell Torvalds wrong, but we can ignore that part. This is where the name came from. At the time, Torvalds didn't actually comment on the name, but it didn't really matter because people started using the name, they liked the name. This is just a couple of days later, and from there, it pretty much just stuck. Even if Torvalds wanted to change the name, it was very quickly going to be very difficult to do so. Also, Tux is a totally fine name, and also it looks like the penguin is wearing a tuxedo, so it's like it's a name on multiple levels with multiple meanings. So with that, I hope you learned something about the lore, about the history of Tux, and why we have a penguin, why it's called Tux, and why it looks the way it does. So, if you learned something, go like the video, go subscribe, and let me know your thoughts down below. Did you learn something new? And if you really liked the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, Daily Bearer Pay, linked in the description down below. That's going to be it for me, and what if I'm a penguin?
Something